Welcome, everyone. Let's get started. So my name is Julian. I am a senior account executive here at LeadSimple, and I am happy to present to you our guest. We are with Kristen Lopez.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Lopez. For those of you guys that don't know me, I am the co-founder of PM Pathbuilders, and my other co-founder, Candace, is here as well. She's in the chat, so you'll see her in there. If you have questions while I'm talking, she's a great person to chat with. But at PM Pathbuilders, we help to design processes and implement them into LeadSimple. So that is why I'm here. And Julian, what are we talking about today?
All right, today we are touching on something that we take for granted a lot of the times in our businesses. We think it's just, it's just a simple checklist, or let's just print this out and mark one by one. But in reality, we're going to talk about the importance of having a solid move-in and move-out process.
Very exciting.
So what can you expect from this seminar? So from this webinar, just to set the agenda, trying to get ahead of your leasing season frenzy and with your workflows. And also, we are going to learn from industry experts on what best practices are. So we couldn't be in better hands with Kristen. We're also going to have a Q&A at the end. That's very important. Let's take advantage of the space. We'll be able to answer your questions in real time too. So feel free to drop in questions and comments as we go. All right. Kristen, first of all, what does it look like, or what are some of the nightmare stories that you've heard of or seen when not having a well-defined move-in or move-out process?
So many, so many. I remember the days of working within a property management company, and we had pretty good systems in place, but still during like this move in, move out season, it was still so stressful. Okay. And to not have those processes, we're running around essentially with like our hair on fire. We may be crying, we may be stressed out, we may be immediately leaving work and having to sit in our car with no music on and just sit and look out the window for like 20 minutes because we're like, what just happened today? So having these well-defined move-in, move-out processes helps to make that easier, helps to make our days a little bit nicer, but to not have them, it's pretty stressful. Like that is really the only word. And I have like this, I can feel the stress weighted on my chest of just like having to walk into work and not have a well-defined move in and move out and trying to figure out what I need to do every single day because there are so many moving parts within these processes. But Julian, what would you add to that? What have you heard from your clients?
What I would say is we've already so my background, like I co-founded a couple Century 21 franchises. We exited. It was great. I was in the business development side of things. And what I would see most is we're falling in love, we're starting a relationship, everything's going great at the beginning, but now there's a contract signed, there's a lease signed. Now we're starting to see what it really feels like to work with us. And that is going to be our first working experience in the move-in process. So I feel like that, and as we discussed earlier, it's going to determine so much of what the relationship is going to look like moving forward, right?
Absolutely, because in the move-in process here, this is really our first big interaction with our residents outside of our application and our screening process. This is really our chance to show our best foot forward and to really bring who we are as a management company and how we want to treat our residents and our owners and what experience we want them to have with us. So really nailing this move-in process and really starting this relationship out on the right foot is huge and is really, if you think about it, a big domino that ripple effects can make things easier further down the line. Because if we fumble our move-in process and we aren't able to get our resident keys on the morning that they're supposed to get keys, or we don't have information for them, or they're not able to get into the property on time, they're angry, right? They're upset, and rightfully so. We told them that this was going to happen, and their reality is not matching their expectation. So what are they going to do, right? Some people that maybe aren't totally mature maybe vengeful, right? May come back at you and put in 50, 60 requests because they've walked around and they found a scuff on the wall, or, oh, a light bulb's not working. We need you to come in and do this. Or they're going to go straight to Google and give you a 1-star review. So really, this is our opportunity here to be able to show our residents, hey, we are going to treat you really well. Here's what you can expect with us. And then also let our owners know, hey, we've done our job. We've done our job and we've filled this vacancy and we've gotten you a new tenant. We're going to help you make money. So it's really a great opportunity for us to be able to put that best foot forward.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And something I would add is a lot of the times we have our most senior employees, they're stellar at giving a great experience, and all of a sudden they're not there that day, or we're not there to deliver that same experience.
Exactly.
What
Exactly.
do we do then?
Some people just wing it and they're like, oh, I don't know. It just all falls apart. But having that well-defined system allows you to plug and play. You know, it allows your employees, because sometimes, especially as employees, we feel like it is so much more stressful to go on vacation because of all of the crap that we have to come back to, right? We know that if we're the only ones within the company that know how to do something, coming back to it is like, oh, it's going to be so stressful. I just might as well not take a vacation. And we don't want our employees to feel that way. We don't want anyone on our team to feel that way. We don't want you as the owners to feel that way. Having the well-defined processes allows you to be able to move in a different person, give somebody a break so they can go enjoy their life, and then come back to not just a pile of, I don't know, garbage. I don't know, dumpster fire. I don't know the different ways to say it, but like you can just come back to something that's not working very well.
Couldn't agree more.
So
All right, we would go ahead.
I was going to say, let's transition over and show what a move-in process could look like.
Fantastic. Let's do it.
So I want to say, as I'm sharing my screen here, whenever we're thinking about these processes and we're talking about best practices, we want to talk about them at like a high level, right? Because there's going to be things today that Julian and I talk about that you may you as in the people watching this, sit and say, oh my gosh, that would never work in my business. And that's great, right? We don't want everybody's processes to look the same. You have nuance within your company. So taking what we're saying today as like these best practices, yes, take them as that, but don't take them as gold standard that they have to be copied and pasted into your account. Take it, figure out what works for you, and then move forward from there to design the best process for you and your company. So can we all see my screen, Julian?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we can look at here our move-in process. And so we have our lovely visualization tool, but with the move-in process for me, it does go linear. It is very, from top to bottom that we're going to work it. So from our process here, our visualization tool, step one is coordinate the move-in. And really the way that we think about this is we're coordinating the move-in, we're facilitating the move-in, whatever you want to call that. And then we have step two, and that's whenever there is the successful move-in. And what I want to show, Julian, and what I'm curious of your view on this is the use of the custom fields within LeadSimple, being able to set up a process. How do you kind of like mindset wise approach those custom fields and designing the process, Julian?
In my opinion, it's all about where do we want not only to customize a process, but where do we want people to be where do we want to hold our team to be accountable for things? So did we set the correct move-in date? Was this actually done? Don't only expect it to be done because somebody's so great at always doing it, because the day they don't, that's going to be a problem. So let's create a custom field around anything that's critical and that can stem a process off into another direction. So that's one of the main ways to use custom fields as a best practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, as well, as you're building out these move-in processes, thinking about these emails that you have to send over and over again, that you have to go and type out, that you have to go and do, that is what we want to be templatized in here. Now we have the choice to automate or not automate, and anything that's going to need customization, I would recommend not automating, right? We don't want an email to fire out that doesn't have a field pulled in, that doesn't have some necessary information in there. So use your automation carefully and strategically, because at this point, you are establishing the relationship. You're building the relationship with your customers. And so inhuman automation or human automation that doesn't feel genuine is going to be a hindrance to you, is going to be an issue, because if people are not feeling the personalized touch at this point, relationship is not starting off really well. So some key things in here, right? Making sure that we are going back over into our software and we're updating and we're canceling any services, right? Lawn care service, making sure that's canceled, that can be fired out of LeadSimple. All that can be automated, right? Once we get to that step, let's cancel that. Now down here, really what I wanted us to look at is just an example of using some of our fields here and really setting this up for success so that things are firing whenever we want them to. So 5 days before the move-in date here, we're verifying that this property is actually move-in ready. Do we need to go back out and do a clean? Are we doing a walkthrough? Whatever that looks like for you. And here we have this as a walkthrough, right? Where we want to solidify that in our move-in here. And for some of you, you may not need that, right? You may not be doing a walkthrough, and that's perfectly fine. But then we have, if we need to schedule outstanding work, generate the code for move-in. What is the code? This is a point here, and I love this. This is one of my favorite things that we built for a customer, is they had a spreadsheet with lockbox codes and like lockbox numbers, right? So lockbox 1 was code 1427. I don't know, but we queued that in as a custom field for them to be able to put what the code is in here. So then whenever the day of move-in letter is sent out, that code pops into that letter. So they are no longer having to go in and make sure that an email is firing at a perfect time. So you can see here, this one is 8 hours after. So this is like 8 o'clock in the morning that this would be sent out of our day in a day of move-in letter, right? So here's your lockbox code in here. Please take the keys from the box. Here's your instructions. Make sure that you're using your Z inspector. You have all of this stuff in our day of move-in letter. That's easily accessible information for our residents. So using these fields strategically to ensure that your team is not having to do extra work, because if a move-in date is on a Saturday, you're now asking your team at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday to make sure that you go and you type in this email or make sure that you schedule this send. So really being strategic here to alleviate some of that work. So Julian, I've done a lot of the talking here. On the move-in here, what would you add to this, Julian? What do we want to make sure that everyone is paying attention to?
Some of the things I love about being able to have the flexibility around the custom fields is we have these custom fields that may vary, so we can include them inside of our instructions. For example, fill this out so that it's ready for that move-in instructions. But there are certain fields that are never going to change. So we can attach custom fields to this is the water company, this is the power company. Why not pre-populate everything that's important so that it pre-populates our communications automatically? So that way we know we can say this property, for example, has a carpet, or this one uses this size filter. So let's just pre-populate things that we don't have to remember every single time. And let's make it difficult for our team and for ourselves to forget to skip a step.
That's so good.
That's the idea. Let's make it difficult to skip steps. And that at the end of the day, that's when it clicks that this is a system that's actually working for us.
Absolutely. And one other thing here on the move-in, right? Having the resident move in, that's great. But then there are other things that we need to do, right? If we are placing those funds on hold, 10 days after, we need to make sure that all of the owner's invoices have been paid and we take them off hold. So depending on really thinking through, where does the move-in start and where does it end? Like, what are the 2 definitive points there that we want to have for this process is going to be key in designing this to ensuring that you're covering all of those steps. Because Julian, I love what you said there, making it hard for your team to forget, right? And a lot of times we may forget to take the owner's funds off of hold, put it as a task, right? Any of those things that are difficult there, or that are easy to forget. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think, Julian, as well, you talked about reviews. That's something that we talked about at the beginning. Is the move-in a great place for us to ask for reviews here? How would you go about that process?
In my opinion, it sets off, it's the beginning of that relationship. So, hey, I would like to know what the move-in experience was like for you. So we can set general rules around what our expectations are. And if we feel that it was a great experience, we have that feedback already. why not send out an invitation for a great review on that initial experience? Because that's always, well, nobody likes moving in or out. It's exciting to move in, but it's scary to have a bad experience. It's a new neighborhood, it's a new complex, it's a new place. You've never been there. How easy did the business make it for you? So I feel it's a great opportunity.
I agree with you completely. And so that's something that we take a lot of time and energy to make sure that we do is updating, right? Because whenever we think of move-in, we think of great tenant, you have a new property. Are you letting the owner know? Are you telling them your resident has moved in today? Are you giving them those updates there? And you can build out a follow-up sequence to make sure that you're sending those out, because sometimes we maybe get in our own way of asking for reviews. I found this, Julian. I don't know if you found this to be true. It's scary to ask somebody to give you a review, or it's scary to put yourself out there to say, hey, how did I do? But pre-building it inside of your LeadSimple here, key, right? Because then it takes all of that pressure, all of those emotions out of it, because it's just going to happen. This is just going to happen with or without you thinking about it. And so that's really key, is after they move in, how are we following up? How are we ensuring that we did a good job? Quality control comes to mind there. So that is another part of the move-in process that we can build out here. Anything we missed on move-in, Julian?
I just feel it is it's great the way that you're kind of setting the stage for what's expected to come for the rest of the relationship. So how are we getting all the information we need? Are we not missing information? How well did we feel treated? So I feel that even though it's a process that is pretty mechanical, because it's you're systematically going through steps, there's that human component that we have steps that are related to how things are going and how people are feeling. So never forgetting that part of the emotional attachment that there is to these types of interactions is key, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing here on the move-ins, and this is something that my partner Candace designed that I didn't even think about, because I was like, yeah, we're just going to send the Google review link to our tenants. Like, let's just send that out to them first. And she said, no, 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 Kristen, we don't want to do that, because a lot of times our negative reviews are from tenants. So we want to add just a small gate there in between sending them the Google review and actually creating a form, whether that's via Jot form or that is Google form, however you choose to do that, asking for feedback there from the resident on their move-in experience first. And then if they rate you really high, then you're sending them the Google request link. I know that there's other companies that will help with that, like 4.5 comes to mind, and other reputation management websites will do that for you. However, if you don't have that, create a form, just create a little barrier there. So if you did accidentally do something incorrect, or the tenant perceives something that way, that you're not just giving them fuel for their fire to go be a keyboard warrior on your Google page.
I agree 100% with that. That's so important, because if there was a really great experience, you're latching onto that feeling and to that emotion, and that's just gonna be transmitted into that positive review. So it's a great opportunity to have it like still be fresh.
Absolutely. So then whenever we move over into move out, I love that. Julian, what are like high level for move out? Like, what are the things that come to your mind as far as like key points that we want to make sure we're hitting in move out?
So we've been really focusing on the tenant experience. I feel like the owner, just keeping him in the loop of everything. Like, what does the property look like? Have inspections taken place? Like, is everything that was promised, were all the promises kept? So all of that, I think, like really focusing on keeping not only the tenant happy, but the owner in the loop of everything that's going on, and making sure that they don't feel like we're overstepping boundaries. I feel that that's a key component of move outs and move ins, but move outs are pretty critical, in my opinion, in that
Absolutely.
sense.
I think I'm a big fan of like over communication. The more that we can
Correct.
communicate and let them know what is going on, the less opportunity there is for the owner to start creating these stories in their head of either positive or negative experiences, because lack of communication just breeds so many problems that we see just balloon out of control. And in our move out process, there's really two key components here. And that's like the actual move out. And then what are we doing with the security deposit, right? Like what are we doing with after we have somebody moved out? How are we either going to give a disposition of the security deposit, or are we going to reconcile money that people owe us? So some of the cool processes that I've built that we've built for some different companies is they've actually split the move out and then the security deposit reconciliation as two separate processes. We were having a conversation this morning of if it's processes or processes. And I'm curious what everyone says, even though they'll be spelled the same, but that is a fun one to think through of how are you actually saying that. But splitting move out and then security deposit reconciliation and disposition into two separate processes. And so
I really love that, Kristen. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I feel it's so crucial to take these big, complex processes or processes and to say, hey, you know what? Let's make it simple. Let's split it into two. Let's not lose focus and let's give everything that requires careful attention that it deserves. And I feel that's so important. And when we start seeing people building these huge, very complex processes that stem off into different directions, guys, keep it simple and understand why it's important. And if needed, split them up into two.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I love is like our approach at PM Pathbuilders is we don't have an idea of a box of how processes should be, right? They are going to be whatever is best for your company, whatever is going to help you get further faster. And sometimes that is breaking it up, and sometimes that is splitting it down into just different stages, depending on how do we want them to run concurrently, or do they not need to run concurrently and we just need them to run in a linear process? That's really the key point of differentiation there of, do we need processes to run at the same time, or can they run all in a linear motion? And so, Amanda, I see a question that you put in there. Do we recommend having different processes entirely for the various types of move outs, lease breaks, non-renewals, transfers, evictions, deceased? If it's happening to you that much, Amanda, 100%, it should be different processes. However, if we simply just need to have that one move out exist in one place at one time, we can create a number of different stages and create some logic at the beginning of what caused this move out. And I do believe, and I'm going to be really embarrassed if it's not my first question here, what triggered this move out, right? That is the first question that we want to ask there, that can then spur off some different logic to either move them into different stages or trigger different processes, depending on the variation there of how different they need to be. So that's my answer to that, Amanda. Julian, what would you add?
I think that's spot on. Is how often is it happening? Is it something that you're going to deal with? Just prepare for it. And does it have to be just a one-off situation, or is it something that we train people on being able to do on a recurring basis? That's the I guess that's the main purpose of why we have this type of system. You want to be able to get anybody off the street that shares your business philosophy, your way of working. They're willing, they're able. Sit, let's follow these rules, and then I'll explain why it's important. But if it's something that happens more than once, create a system for it. Not once, but often, I would say.
Exactly. And that's what we always say is we don't create processes for one-off situations or outliers. We create processes for the majority that can be easily digestible, because we will always have those weird ones that come in of like, oh my gosh, we call those like, oh shoot, right? Like, oh shoot, what do we do here? That is where, we maybe don't need to create an entire process. We just figure out, what do we do? What are the boundaries that we want our team to understand in those scenarios?
Exactly.
So for the move out, exactly the same as the move in, we want to just make sure that we have all of our steps laid out here and all of those key points of communication laid in to ensure that we are following what we need to do. And really this one here of tenant has moved out, what are the next steps? Like you were talking about, Julian, that owner communication, like that is so key, and letting them know, hey, your tenant has officially moved out. Here's what we're going to do next. We'll get your property back on the market in X amount of time. And then go ahead and, if you need to, right, start the security deposit reconciliation, or go ahead and pop it back up to make ready or turn, or whatever you call that process in between the tenant moving out and getting it ready for market. Have that in here to where you're just constantly being able to run them in a circle, essentially, over and over again.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Again, those are recommendations, those are best practices we've seen over the years. However, your process will always be your own. So make sure you're not only seeing it from a best practices standpoint, is what's important to you locally, what matters, what does regulation say. So that's what the way that I would see building a process and what direction your process should take.
Absolutely. That's so good, Julian, because it does vary so much from state to state as far as what you need to make sure that you have included in each one of these processes. And so I think that what's really great, Julian, is what you're going to talk about next that you guys at LeadSimple have developed to help everyone.
So this is an assessment, and I love the fact that we're doing this because it's telling you, all right, what is it? How do I stack up against the best in the industry? How do I stack up against the best locally? So super interesting. Take advantage of this. It's a free assessment. Scan it with your phone. It's a really enjoyable process to be able to have a conversation with an expert after you have both brainstormed and identified what's truly important to you and what's critical in this point in time for your business and in your business.
That's so good. You have to know. If you don't know, how can you fix it?
If you're not on LeadSimple operations yet, what are you waiting for? Book a demo today. We're not only bringing best practices and for consulting, it's also process efficiency. You've got experts like Kristen that can help out in building your processes. You've got internal technical support here at LeadSimple. We are here to support you and make sure that we have an ongoing 15, 20-year relationship at least.
If anyone wants to get in contact with our team at PM Pathbuilders, our website is just our name, pmpathbuilders.com. And we'd be more than happy to chat with you guys, walk through processes. Again, our approach is very custom to you and what makes the most sense for you. So if you have any questions or just want to chat processes, I think I could do this all day. So if you just have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to answer those.
All right, I would love to dive into some Q&A or anything that anybody had any questions about. Would love to get those answered now.
I think I saw one come in earlier. Do you send the move-in review request at the end of their lease to determine if you are sending the move-out review request? I think that you can send the review request at multiple times throughout your management journey. The way that I like to think about this is through, and I remember talking about this with somebody, but happiness triggers, right? Like there are peak times that we're doing things right in the property management journey. And so I would request feedback at specific times that we've done things really well. So let's say that we had a maintenance request come in and somebody says, hey, or like, hey, this is broken, and we fix it like within 3 hours. That right there is a happiness trigger where we're asking them for feedback, right? So really figuring out these different times throughout our management journey and our client life cycle that we can send these review requests. I don't think it's only limited to one process or the other. I think you should be actively seeking out feedback from your residents via a form. You could come up with a couple of different ones. And then if you're getting that good feedback, that is then your trigger to submit or to request from them a Google review. So that just some different ways there to do that. Typically do a pre-move out inspection. You know, Ming, I've seen that vary from company to company. I've had some people that use tools like Z Inspector or different things like that, or even, again, a form to have the tenants do their own move out inspection. In California, I believe that you have to offer to do a pre-move out inspection. So depending on your state regulations, you may or may not actually need to do that. So it's really just going to depend. I found that they can be incredibly helpful. It just depends on your team structure, right? If you're property manager, if you see that as something that'll save, 10, 15 hours on the back end by them going out there first and doing a pre-move out inspection, 100% you should do it. It's really just like cost benefit analysis that you'll need to run there whenever you're implementing something like that into your process, because it is going to take time. Who's going to do it? Will they have the capacity to do it? Because if we are sending our property managers, what work are they not doing by doing that? Because everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. So by asking them to take a day out of the office to go do something, what are we then saying that they're not going to get to in that day? Should it be the property manager? Is this somebody else that we should hire entirely? So there's a lot of, there is no answer. I'm so sorry. But it really just depends on what is the benefit that's going to be provided to your team, and is it really going to give you that big of a leap forward to be able to do it? Julian, what would you add to that?
I completely agree. And I feel like something that we really need to focus on is, as we were saying in the beginning, the move-in process is going to set the tone for the relationship to get started, but the move-out process is also an opportunity to kind of fix any bad situation that happened throughout the relationship. So also keep that in mind. We all know that just real estate and property management is so local. They're going to be talking to your next tenants, and what was that experience? So it's an opportunity to give a great experience to your owner, to your tenant. And if a pre-inspection is what's going to be best for everyone, I think that's really what you have to consider. So it's almost a case by case scenario sometimes.
In the way that I like to phrase those like pre-move out inspections, because if you think about what the resident is going through, they're packing all their things. They have to find boxes. I didn't realize that you have to buy boxes if you don't just have them or have a Costco membership. Like you have to go find boxes to move with. So like they're pretty stressed out, right? So to then add a pre-move out inspection, we have to make sure we frame this in the right way that it's a benefit to them. The reason that we want to do this pre-move out inspection is because I want to make sure that you get back as much money on your security deposit as possible. This is a benefit for you. This is not a benefit for me. So it's all going to come down to as well how we're framing this ask that we're having of, hey, you're going through a lot of stuff right now. You're trying to figure out what you're doing after you're moving out of this property. And I want to come in and I want to walk it. I mean, like calling it an inspection may feel too heavy to our residents. Instead, it's like, hey, this is for your security deposit. This is to make sure that we can get you as much money back as possible. This is to make sure that, you're aware of everything that's happening. So just really thinking through that framing of how we present that is going to be really key as well in our move out process there.
I love that. I love that. Communication is everything, and the wording we use, even though it's our jargon internally, it's just we have to remember we're talking to people who don't deal with this every day. Maybe they haven't moved out in 2 or 5 years. You never know. So just keeping it basic, keeping it real, human, and showing them the benefit, and we're thinking of them. Do you have a software implemented for communication to vendors to get price estimates in case we want 3 different quotes from vendors? Super easy to set up. What would you recommend there, Kristen?
Well, I would recommend there to either utilize your property management accounting software, whether that's your AppFolio or that is your Rentvine or Buildium, whatever you're on for your accounting software. That is where I would recommend to have that specific function in there. You could, however, pull in some of that information to be able to send out to your owner. So you could pull in what the estimates are into LeadSimple to send that email out. However, the actual act of collecting those and being able to review them, I would recommend leaving those within your property management accounting software. Again, your AppFolio, your Rentvine, your Buildium, your Rent Tech, whatever you're using for that, that's where I would recommend to use that.
What Zapier assisted automations would you say are the most advantageous to consider building with move in and move out for Zapier newbie?
Oh, that's such a good question. So the first thing here is I like to set up processes with no zaps first. So whenever you're saying newbie, that's the only word I want to key in on there first is if we're running a process for the first time, we want to make sure that we are running the process smoothly with no extra additives in there, right? We're building our sundae. We have the ice cream, we have the chocolate sauce. That's our LeadSimple, and our Zaps are all the sprinkles and the whipped cream on top, right? So let's make sure that we have a good sundae first. And then from there, it really is just going to depend. Whenever I think about Zaps, it's what is taking me the most time? What is me having to go outside of either my LeadSimple or my software to be able to pull, and I'm having to go and spend extra time doing? That is where I would start. I would not, I don't just have a list of what it is. It's really going to depend on what is taking you the most time and what is just the most mundane thing that you are doing here that is taking you the most time. And that is what you want to set up the Zaps and the automation on first, is the things that just are like, the automation can do it. You don't have to go in and do it. It's just, that is where I would do an analysis on, is where am I spending the most time on the most mundane task? And that's the first one that we would want to create those Zaps around.
I completely agree. Zapier is a phase B or C in your process building. What Zapier is the integration between different web apps. So if you feel like you're always constantly having to go to a different web app and create a document or store it in your Google Drive. So Zapier is just connecting different web apps based on triggers. And LeadSimple is extremely Zapier friendly. And you can get to geek out on that and find out thousands of Zaps you can create, but I would leave it as a phase C or D.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I've seen. One of the biggest mistakes that I've seen people make is they try to rush in and do too much too fast. And really, the core process is the most important thing that you can build. Again, adding the sprinkles on top and adding the whipped cream and adding the cherry is really great to your sundae, but do you even have ice cream in the bowl? Do you even have a bowl, right? So it's really just making sure that your process is well defined first. And then from there, once you're running it, you're like, oh, well, this task, why am I where like, why am I manually needing to start this task? Maybe I can build a Zap between my AppFolio and my LeadSimple, or from my Notion page into here to trigger this workflow to start. That's whenever you start to be creative with it. But at first, you've kind of got to be a little bit boring, and you have to be okay with that, of just having your process so well defined and working, because then from there, that's when you decide, what do I not need to be doing? What can be automated? What can be removed from my plate? But you've got to get in and you've got to do the work first. So if you just start automating, it's going to break. And then you're going to be like, I don't know, 50K in on like trying to figure something out. And then you're just wasting money and time because you don't even have a process that runs correctly. So building the process first is so key.
That was a great answer.
Yes. Love it. Love it. I love whenever everybody's AI is on the chat and giving all of their information. I just love the knowledge share that is able to be passed in between everything. I think that's super cool. Any other questions?
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I would just like to invite everybody again to take that free assessment, to schedule your demo. And remember, you're not just getting a piece of tech, you're getting people who are in it with you. So we're in this together. We firmly believe that we can offer solutions that will not only help you get out of a quick pickle, but will create a system that will generate solutions for years to come. So
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, and LeadSimple is the best.
thank you so much, Kristen. That was amazing.